All right. Now we get to the receiver position, which this team has really good receivers. And if you're part of fantasy, like it's good because you can own any one of them, roster or draft any one of them, but they all pop off at different times. Romeo Doubs seemed to be the most consistent last year, 59 catches, 674 yards with 8 touchdowns. He finishes a wide receiver 4. He was a wide receiver 36. So fringe wide receiver 3 in deeper leagues, wide receiver 4 in your more shallow leagues. That's decent, right? With especially the way that Jordan Love produced. But it's like, it's not something you can really count on. And on a week in, week out basis, he was always good, had maybe 1 or 2 blow-up games throughout the year, but was mostly average. And that's a tough player to play, a guy that can't really win you a week. So Romeo Doubs, to me, probably going to play a similar role. Last year, we had Christian Watson, who was out at times. Luke Musgrave was out at times. And the run game with Aaron Jones out at times, it's like there was more room for him to grow. I just don't see a whole lot more from Romeo Doubs outside of 600, 700 yards, 5 to 7 touchdowns. Like that's about the range. So am I really interested in drafting him? No. Do I think he's the wide receiver 1 on this team? Absolutely not. It's not Romeo Doubs. Do I think he's a safe wide receiver on this team? Yes. But they're getting one of their guys back, hopefully healthy. He hasn't been able to stay healthy in Christian Watson. And then we saw Jayden Reed really take the reins towards the end of last year. So I like Romeo Doubs. I think he's a safe player. If you can get him outside the top 45 receivers, it's a decent play, but I think you can get more upside later, which is what you'd be playing on any receiver that's not Romeo Doubs. He's the ultimate safe guy, flex. Like, I don't really want any upside. That's what Romeo Doubs is. And then Christian Watson played in 9 games last year, had trouble staying healthy. We talked about that the year before. It's could he stay healthy? And he had issues with that previously. So 400 yards for him last year, 5 touchdowns. Not even great really on a per game basis. Like, he was decent, nothing to write home about. So Christian Watson, man, he's a player that if it all sticks to him, for an entire season, I think there's potential there. It's just we ain't seen it. And it's tough, man, because he's a player that obviously I was, for those watching and to know my content, I was one of the guys that was really early on Christian Watson and his ability to make plays. I called out one of the game against Dallas. We saw that what the potential was with him, with Aaron Rodgers. I want to see Christian Watson be able to get through an entire season. And I still don't think that he's the number 1 receiver on this team, which says enough. So I think he'll be an inconsistent flex option at best. I'd probably stay away from Christian Watson unless you got him at a really good price and you had enough starting pieces that you just wanted some decent upside chill on your bench. To me, the number 1 receiver is Jayden Reed, and I think that we can clearly say that after the year he had last year. He finished as the 25th best receiver, wide receiver 25, 793 yards and 8 touchdowns, including some stuff on the ground too. Like, we saw Jayden Reed be utilized pretty much in that Christian Watson role. Both of them were second-round picks, and I think Jayden Reed, it was clear to me that was the target for Jordan Love. He had 64 catches. And so even in a season where Romeo Doubs at time looked like the possession receiver, it was Jayden Reed who was getting a lot of work, even in the second half of the year. So I think Jayden Reed has a very nice future here with the Packers, and I think he has a very good season this year. And he finished wide receiver 25 last season. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that he improves on that he becomes a 1,000-yard receiver, flirts with the 7 to 10 touchdown range. I think that's kind of the route for Jayden Reed. And to me, he seems like he might be a value this year. If we can get him outside the top 35 receivers, which my guess is he's going to be outside the top 30 for sure. If we can get him outside the top 30 to 35 receivers, I see a really nice lane for Jayden Reed to be on fantasy teams. I'll be talking about him as a sleeper moving forward. And then Dontayvion Wicks really stepped up in the second half of last season. Once the team had a couple injuries, Christian Watson went out. They needed him as a third receiver. He finished wide receiver 58 on the year, but his per game numbers were way better in the games where he was starting and getting work. I still think this is a deeper league play. This isn't somebody who I want to consistently count on for fantasy purposes and redraft, unless we get to a point in the middle of the season where we need to pick up a guy like Dontayvion Wicks. So we saw the 4 receivers last year, and to me it was very clear. The hierarchy was Jayden Reed, then Romeo Doubs, then Christian Watson, then Dontayvion Wicks. Wicks was obviously the last one, right? I think you could interchange. If you want upside, you go Christian Watson. If you want floor, you go Romeo Doubs. But I think Doubs is the safer of the two, and I would have him ranked over Christian Watson. So if I was going Packers receivers as of today, the way I would rank them, number 1, Jayden Reed. I think he stays there the entire year. I would go number 2, Romeo Doubs. Number 3, Christian Watson later in your drafts for upside. Dontayvion Wicks is a free agent waiver wire pick. I don't really see a whole lot of value with him.